Serving as an impetus, the Pope's speech officially began the Crusades. The Pope provided a justifiable reason for the high religious populace to go to war. He offered several heavenly benefits. In fact, people were given a requital of sins, which proved to be quite a compelling incentive, as thousands went off to war. While men have been fighting for religion for centuries, few have been able to gather so many people together at one moment for the sake of God. Though the Pope preached for a fight for God, he also had several more worldly reasons for advocating for the First Crusades. In his own speech, Pope Urban II indicated that he feared the Muslims would continue their attack. Arabs expanding into Europe meant the conquering of Christian lands that the Pope ruled, which in turn would result in a severe loss of power for the Pope. On the other hand, taking land for Christianity in the Middle East offered the Pope a chance to extend his power. In fact, none of the Byzantine Empire was included in the Pope's domain. The empire followed the Eastern Orthodox Church instead. If Catholic Christians retook Jerusalem, then the Catholic Church would have a chance to establish more control over the region. The Crusades provided the Pope not only with a way to defend his power, but also gave him an opportunity to expand it over new lands.
Crusades consisted of many separate, distinct campaigns spanning nearly 2 centuries. Fighting was often bloody, and in one case, 70,000 Muslims died in the European sack of a single city. Jerusalem was a city in turmoil, switching sides many times as the Crusades continued. The Muslims eventually secured the city for themselves, however. The Crusades was very much a war, though not necessarily known by that by name. You see, the Crusades entailed a lot of fighting between these young Christian warriors and the so-called infidels of the Middle East. Now, as far as weapons go, Crusaders had a wide variety to choose from. Most notably, they used swords, and oftentimes these swords were customized so that the handle fit right and there was a protection for the hand. And if you had enough money, they even threw some jewels on there just to, make it look snazzy. And as battle continued, people oftentimes got stuck lying on the ground, and it's kind of hard to put a hulking sword into someone's chest, so instead they just took their fancy little dagger out of their side and dink, you're dead. The most notable, the most prolific, the most effective tool that they used, though maybe not as well known, was the mace. This weapon provided the young Christian warriors the opportunity to penetrate the new armor that was growing increasingly stronger. Other weapons that they were able to use included the hammer, the axe, and the crossbow. Now, all of these weapons seem pretty deadly to me, and obviously they were, based on the 1.5 million deaths, that's approximate, that occurred during the Crusades. And so what can we take away from this? Do we take away any effective new innovations in the gunpowder business? No. Did they use cannons? No. Pretty much, it was brutal warfare, and it wasn't fun, folks. That's all I have to say. See you next time. I'm John Green.
The Crusades were not just death and destruction. They accelerated the growth of trade between the Middle East and Europe. As Crusaders returned with various goods and valuables from the Middle East, Europeans back home wanted access to the Arab world to obtain such artifacts for themselves. Increased demand called for increased supply, and thus trade routes between Europe and the Middle East expanded, allowing for an increased rate of exchange. However, like any business, corruption and treachery did seep in. There are even accounts of lives being lost during exchanges and on trade routes.
Another important change that the Crusades brought was a social one, and that was the intermarriage between the Europeans and the Arabs. Now, this intermarriage, along with the increased economic trade, fostered and furthered this cultural exchange between Europe and the Middle East. But also, the intermarriages, that is, point to a possible ulterior and more secular motive for some of these crusaders to fight in the Crusades. And Well, the promise of a wife, which was promised to many of the Crusaders, was quite compelling in and of itself. But also, with this promise of marriage came the possibility that some of the more impoverished Europeans could gain an inheritance, whether that be in land or trade or gold, some sort of inheritance that would be unthinkable to them without these circumstances.